I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God.
Hey everyone, I hope your week's going great. I hope that your first shot at distance learning has not been too frustrating or overwhelming for you or your family. It looked like from Facebook posts that maybe some of you already finished with your assignments and your work for the week, while others of you have maybe been spending too much time in recess class and not in your core classes. But whatever situation you find yourself in, I hope that you are optimistic and that you're encouraged during these strange times, and that you as a family are able to grow closer to one another during all this togetherness that you are getting. Really for us, there's not been a lot different here at the building. There's a lot of people that are up here working on the building. We've just finished our 5th video Bible lesson that I'm sure you saw on Sunday, and now we're going to shift a little bit since that series is over. And Buster's going to continue to put out those video lessons on Sunday, and I'll help him a little bit with that. And then Wednesdays, he's going to try to do some live Bible classes to where we can have some interaction, while I try to shift to do more teen videos and throw around some more ideas about what we can do to stay connected during this time that we're apart. So you'll be getting information soon about what we're going to do different with Epic, what senior recognition might look like for our graduating seniors, and also maybe some different things regarding Easter that we might put in place. Shelby's still be able to work, thank goodness, and that she's actually still has to go into work each and every day. You would think that during a time like this that a furniture company would not be essential, but for some reason they are essential, and we're grateful for that, so that she can still have a job. But today what I want to do is talk about what this week's going to look like, what the coming weeks are going to look like, and what to expect. So along with this video, I will also have a study guide worksheet that's linked. It's going to be in the video description at the bottom. I'm also going to send that PDF out through Remind, and I'm also going to include it in the parent email that's going to accompany all of this. What you can find in that study guide are a lot of questions, and it's sort of split up. And that's what we're going to use to guide our Zoom Hangouts on Friday. So what you have to do is between now and Friday, you will have the goal of completing that worksheet. There's some questions that are just general questions every week about just kind of getting the conversation going about how your week's going, about some things that are happening in your life. And then we're going to jump into the study. We're going to look at studying the one another's. There's, I think, 59 different times in the New Testament that we're directed to do something to one another. And that's one of my favorite things to talk about. And I found a short little study on that. So we'll spend about the next 6 weeks looking at different aspects of one another. And so these guides will walk you through one of those aspects. It'll have you read different passages and answer some questions about each passage. These questions will be very similar each week, but the topic will determine what your answers are going to look like. And I really want you to get specific on your answers. There might be some questions for how you can put this in place, and I'm going to ask for specific answers about how you can do it, not only today, but during the week, during this weird time of isolation, of how we can put those one another's in place. I also want to encourage those of you that have siblings, that the older sibling, maybe this is a good opportunity for you to lead your younger siblings through this study, and maybe study on your own, and then sit down Friday morning or Thursday night and work through that study guide together, share your answers, so that whenever we have our Zoom meetings, you guys will already as a family have talked through some of those things. So let's talk about those Zoom Hangouts. This coming Friday, we'll have our first round of Zoom Hangouts. We're going to have junior high only Hangouts. That's going to be grades 6th through 8th. Those will meet at 2 o'clock on Friday. And then our high school Zoom will be right after that at 3 o'clock. It'll be for 9th through 12th graders. And so what's going to happen is I'm going to send out a meeting ID and a meeting password through Remind. and also through an email probably sent to the parents. So you will have to sign in to Zoom. If you haven't created an account yet, go ahead and create an account. It's free. Sign in through Zoom, and then you'll click Join Meeting. Then you'll be prompted to insert the meeting ID and the meeting password, and then you'll be put into a waiting room, and then I physically will add you to the class. I've been reading up on security and privacy regarding Zoom. I know there's been some Zoom bombings of people hijacking a Zoom and hacking into it and kind of doing some inappropriate things. And I've read a lot of articles about how we can keep that from happening, and I've changed some privacy settings and some settings where I have more control on my end. So I think that we're going to be okay. If you're concerned about that, there's a site called Protect Young Eyes that has a Facebook page, and they put out a lot of resources about how to protect our young people from internet, and there's some really good resources on there. I may include their link to the email so you parents can see some of their resources, and they have some great things, and it even had a live question and answer live Facebook video that they did this past week to help people understand how they can better protect themselves from Zoom. So upon arrival into the Zoom meeting, you will be muted, and I will have to unmute each person to try to avoid everybody talking over one another. We'll sort of try it that way. We'll keep everybody muted. If you have something to say, you can just raise your hand or do something to get our attention, and I'll unmute you one at a time. I encourage you to have your worksheets with you, because that's going to be what we use to guide our thoughts, and so you can already have your answers ready as those questions come up. And I'm really not going to expect everybody to talk. I know some of you are hesitant to talk even in a personal, in-person Bible class, and I know that myself at your age, I sure wouldn't have wanted to have my voice heard, especially over a virtual Zoom. And so I'm going to be sensitive to that. I'm not going to necessarily call anybody out, but I really want to encourage those of you who are not scared of talking. We know who you are, and I know who you are. I'm really going to encourage you to take lead on this and to lead a lot of the conversation, so that those who aren't really willing to talk won't have to, and that there'll be plenty of conversation going. So there's several of you that I know are going to handle this well, and I really encourage you to spend a lot of your time having answers and being ready to talk, so that there's not so much of a silence for 40 minutes straight. So before I throw you into this week's study, I wanted to give you a little bit of a thought, something that I took from it, so that as you study, maybe you can think about a few things. This week's topic is love one another. And that's going to be from John chapter 13, verse 34 through 35. That's the one that we're going to focus on, but I'm also going to include a supplementary passage, and that's going to be from 1 John chapter 3, verses 11 through 24. So I want you to read those two passages and study those two passages. The first one that I want to point you to is John chapter 13, and it's one that I reference in classes a lot, that you've heard referenced over and over probably, and it's where Jesus tells his disciples that he gives them a new command, to love one another, so that the whole world will know that you are his disciples by how you love one another. And what's interesting this time through when I read it was the sequence that it took place in. So it took place right after Jesus washed his disciples' feet, and then afterwards he told them that he would be going away soon. And then right after he told them that he was going to be going away, he told them to love one another. And that's interesting. That's interesting that right when he was telling them he was going to go away, he explains to them how they're to love one another. And maybe that was on purpose. I believe that he put that in place so that we would see that with him going away, there was going to be a void. There was going to be a void of that love. There was going to be a void of somebody being there for them in the way that Jesus was. And so Jesus establishes his church. He tells us to love one another, not to take the place of Christ, because no one can fulfill that role, but rather to be the physical representation of Christ to one another and to the world. Let me put it a different way. This is how somebody explained it. to me a while back, and it really made a lot of sense. So let's think about electricity for a moment. Your house has electricity running through it, and whenever you need something to have electricity to be powered, you plug it into the wall, and that electricity flows into that device. Well, the electricity has a source from somewhere, and the only way to get it from the source to your device or whatever electronics you're plugging in is to allow it to run through wires or through conduit, what the wires run through. And so in this example, we are the conduit to the love of Jesus. The source is Jesus, and for it to get from Jesus to somebody else, it has to run through something. And Jesus establishes his church and tells us to love one another, and we're invited to be that conduit. We're invited to be the source to which that love flows through. Jesus knew that we would need one another to make it in this world. And my question is, are you taking full advantage of the blessings of the church that Christ intended for us? I invite you to fully immerse yourself into the church and to show others how much Christ loves you by how you love them. There are far too many people who haven't been fully immersed into the church, and by that I mean just fully gotten involved to experience such a loving and such a family atmosphere of what a church can provide and a church can represent. I myself have had times to where there were times where I just didn't feel like I had a lot of people in my corner. And man, the church really stepped up with families just treating me like their own and adopted me when I was single and on my own, and that meant so much. Also, now, being established here in Blanchard, there's just been so many people that I've looked up to, that have stepped in to encourage me, that have treated me like a son almost. And I'm just so thankful for what the church has meant to me. And a lot of people haven't ever got to experience that because they haven't fully jumped into it. And maybe it's because they've been hurt in the past by the church, which, again, it's just imperfect people, so it's easy to see how people can be hurt by what they would consider the whole church. And maybe it's just people being fearful of being completely transparent with other people, or being fully vulnerable with other people. But whatever the case, I hope and pray that each one of us can overcome our worries and our fears about being one family, and we can fully see how much love can and should flow from Christ through us and into those that we interact with, beginning with our fellow brothers and sisters in Christ. I think it has to start there, because that's how people will know that we're the disciples of Christ, by how we love one another better than anything that you could ever imagine. Christ knew that we would need it so much that he commanded it of us, so that the world would know that we were his disciples. And to make that big of a difference, it requires a reckless kind of love, a radical kind of love. And that kind of love can only fully be expressed through us submitting ourselves to Christ and allowing his Spirit to lead us into that love, to lead us into loving one another the way that he loves each one of us. And in John chapter 3, there's a description of what that love looks like, how he loved us so much, and what kind of love that we're supposed to mimic. In 1 John 3:16, it says, "This is how we know what love is. Jesus Christ laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for our brothers and sisters." In this study guide, you'll be asked specific ways in which you can do that during this week. Specific ways in which you can love one another. Specific ways in which you can lay your life down for one another. Let's share these ideas together as we learn together on Friday, so we can better figure out how to love one another, especially during this time that we are separated. Now I'm going to include a song that I hope that you can learn, that you can listen to. It's one that actually has been sort of the theme song for those 5 videos that Buster and I have put out. It's called No Longer Slaves. The version I'm including is by the Zoe Group. It's become one of my favorite songs, mainly probably because I've listened to it so much just editing those videos, and I hope that it's encouraging to you as we think about how we can go forward during this time without fear and cling to the hope that we have in Christ Jesus. I'll see you guys Friday. If you have any questions, please let me know. I love you, and I miss you guys, and we'll talk to you on Friday.
I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child.